I thought opening our relationship would make me feel free, but all it did was destroy the one person who truly loved me. I lost my love, my best friend, and the future we built, all because I wanted to experience life. This is my story, how I opened our marriage and ended up alone. My name is Lauren, and I'm 31 years old. Until recently, I was engaged to Ethan, the man I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with. We were together for 6 years, engaged for 2, and I honestly believed we were solid. Not perfect, but grounded, the kind of couple that survives storms and still holds hands at the end. But looking back now, I see how slowly everything started to slip. Not from fights or betrayal, but from something far worse: complacency. Ethan was steady, always reliable, always caring, always there. But somewhere inside me, I started feeling like life was passing me by. I'd scroll through social media, see people my age traveling, partying, meeting new people, and I'd feel this dull ache. Like I'd skipped a chapter in my own story. I didn't tell Ethan at first. I tried to push it down, pretend it was just a phase. But that feeling of missing out kept growing, especially as our wedding got closer. The idea of forever, something that once felt romantic, suddenly terrified me. What if I never got to live before settling down? So one evening, while Ethan was cooking dinner, I brought it up. My heart was pounding. I told him I wanted to talk. He turned off the stove, gave me that patient look that always made me feel safe, and said, "What's wrong?" That question almost broke me because the truth was, nothing was wrong. He hadn't hurt me. He hadn't failed me. But still, I said the words that would start our downfall. I think I need to experience more before we get married. I want to try an open relationship. The silence that followed was unbearable.
He didn't yell.
He didn't even look angry, just confused and deeply hurt. I'll never forget that look. It was like I had just punched the air out of him. He asked, "Why now?" I said something about wanting to make sure I was ready, that I didn't want to live with regrets later. But even as I said it, it sounded hollow. I told myself it was about honesty and self-growth, but deep down it was about fear and curiosity. Ethan said no. Calmly. Firmly. He told me he wasn't interested in that kind of relationship, that love wasn't something you put on pause. I remember crying, telling him he was being controlling, that he didn't understand me. I twisted his refusal into rejection, when really it was loyalty. For days, I tried to convince him. I sent him articles, podcasts, anything that would make it sound reasonable. Every no he gave me made me feel more distant from him. Until one night, he just looked at me across the couch and said,
"Fine.
Let's try it." The way he said it, cold, detached, should have scared me. But in that moment, I felt relieved. I thought I'd won something. We sat there making rules. No attachments, full honesty, temporary arrangement. It all sounded neat on paper, like we were two mature adults exploring something progressive. But it wasn't that.
It was the beginning of the end.
That same night, I downloaded a dating app. Ethan watched quietly as I scrolled through profiles, pretending to be unbothered. I should have felt shame. Instead, I felt powerful. For the first time in years, I had control. The next few weeks were a blur. I went on casual dates, drinks, dinners, meaningless flirty conversations. I told myself I wasn't doing anything wrong, that it was just exploration. But every time I came home, Ethan felt more like a stranger. He never asked questions, never acted jealous. He'd just smile politely when I mentioned going out. That cold acceptance unnerved me. I thought he'd fight for me, that he'd get jealous and remind me how much he loved me. Instead, he acted like he didn't care. That's when I started to feel it, the first sting of regret. One evening, I came home from a date, still laughing about some stupid joke a guy told me. Ethan was sitting on the couch, scrolling his phone. When I walked in, he didn't even look up. Just said, "Hey, hope you had fun." That tone, so calm, so detached, broke something inside me. A few days later, he mentioned casually that he was meeting someone for coffee. I asked who. He said, "Chloe." The name hit me like a slap. Chloe, my former best friend. The woman I'd cut off years ago for saying something flirty to him once. I froze. You're kidding, right? He just said, no, we're just catching up. I tried to laugh it off, but inside I was spiraling. My fiancé, meeting my ex-best friend. After I was the one who suggested openness? I spent that whole evening restless, checking my phone, pacing around. He didn't come home angry or guilty, just calm. He even told me directly, it was just coffee. But the thought of him sitting across from her, talking, maybe laughing the way we used to, it made me sick. That's when I realized I never wanted an open relationship. I wanted control. I wanted freedom without consequences. And now, for the first time, I felt what he must have felt all along. The burn of jealousy, the fear of being replaced. Later that night, I couldn't help myself. I called Chloe. She didn't answer. The next day, I went to her place. I stood outside her door like some unhinged woman, knocking, shouting her name. When she opened the door, she looked startled but calm. Lauren, what are you doing here? I snapped. You couldn't wait, could you? You've wanted him since day one. She just sighed and said quietly, you wanted an open relationship. He didn't. Maybe think about what that means. Those words cut deeper than I expected. I left shaking with anger, but it wasn't anger at her, it was anger at myself. When I got home, Ethan barely looked up from his laptop. Everything okay? He asked. I just nodded, pretending nothing happened. But inside, panic had started building. Because for the first time since this whole thing began, I was losing control. First update. After that day at Chloe's place, something inside me shifted. I told myself I was fine, that Ethan and I had agreed to this, that I had no right to feel jealous. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw them together, laughing, maybe touching hands, maybe remembering things we all used to share. It was torture. Ethan, on the other hand, was calm.
Too calm.
He didn't question my nights out anymore, didn't check where I was going or who I was with. He just existed, like my choices no longer affected him. And that scared me more than any fight ever could. I started noticing things I'd never seen before. How quiet he'd become, how rarely he smiled, how detached his eyes looked when I tried to make small talk. It was like he was slowly fading out of our life while still standing in the same room. One morning, as he made coffee, I blurted out, so, you and Chloe are talking now? He didn't flinch.
Yeah.
Just friends. That just friends hit me like a knife. Because I could tell from his tone it wasn't about Chloe. It was about him reclaiming something I'd taken away, his dignity. I wanted to lash out, to accuse him of hypocrisy, but I stopped myself. I had no right. I was the one who'd opened this door. I just didn't expect him to walk through it. Still, my pride wouldn't let me show it. So I started talking more about my dates. I'd casually mention a guy named Oliver from the gym, another one from work. I exaggerated their compliments, hoping to get a reaction. But Ethan barely looked up. Cool, he'd say, before sipping his coffee. That single word, cool, broke me more than any argument could. At night, I'd lie beside him, staring at the ceiling, wondering when exactly I lost him. The man who once kissed my forehead every morning now felt like a polite stranger.
Days passed like that.
He worked late, spent more time outside, sometimes came home smelling like cologne that wasn't his usual. I'd pretend not to notice, but inside, my stomach twisted. I started checking his social media, something I hadn't done in years. And there it was, a new photo, a scenic coffee shop. I recognized it instantly. Chloe's favorite spot. The caption was simple. Good conversation. Good company. No tags. No hints. But I knew. I didn't need proof. That night, I couldn't sleep. My chest felt tight, my thoughts racing. I kept thinking about how I'd begged for freedom, and now that I had it, all I wanted was to be chained back to the safety of what we had. The next day, his sister called me. She sounded cautious, like she already knew something was wrong. Lauren, I saw Ethan today. He seemed different. I laughed awkwardly. Yeah, he's just been busy. But she paused and said softly, you know he's seeing Chloe again, right? My throat went dry. What do you mean, seeing? I don't know. Maybe just as friends, she said. But they looked close. I hung up quickly after that. I couldn't breathe. Later that night, when Ethan got home, I asked him directly, "Are you seeing her?" He looked at me calmly and said, "We're spending time together, yes. Nothing you didn't do first." My eyes stung. "So, this is revenge?" He shook his head.
No.
"This is me living by the rules you created." I wanted to scream, cry, beg him to stop, but I didn't. Because deep down, I knew he was right. After that, I tried to fix things in small ways, cooking his favorite meal, asking about his day, acting like we were still us. But he saw through it. He'd thank me politely, eat quietly, and then go to bed early. The silence between us grew heavy, suffocating. One evening, I tried a different tactic, guilt. I told him I felt like we were drifting apart. He looked at me for a long moment before saying, "That's what happens when you open a door that was never meant to be opened." I didn't have a response. It's strange how fast you can lose someone who's still right beside you. Ethan was still there, same house, same bed, but he wasn't mine anymore. And it got worse. A few days later, his phone rang. He was in the shower, and I saw the name flash across the screen. Chloe. My heart pounded. I knew I shouldn't, but I answered. Her voice was calm, collected. "Hey, just tell Ethan I'll see him at the cafe tomorrow, okay?" She didn't sound flirty, just comfortable. Too comfortable. I hung up without replying. My hands were shaking. I stared at his phone, half tempted to throw it, to smash it against the wall. When he came out, I tried to act normal. He picked up his phone, glanced at me, and said, "You answered?" I nodded, pretending to be casual. He just said, "You could have told her I'd call back." No anger. No defense. Just calm acceptance. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't the center of his world anymore. That night, I cried quietly in bed while he slept peacefully beside me. I thought I'd wanted excitement, something new, something thrilling. But all I wanted now was the simple comfort of his arms around me, the way it used to be before I ruined everything. Then came the worst part, watching him slowly reclaim his life without me. He started going to the gym again, smiling more, even humming while making breakfast. The same man I drained with my endless what-ifs now looked free. And I hated myself for realizing too late that freedom was never what I wanted. I wanted security disguised as adventure, validation dressed up as independence. But by the time I figured that out, Ethan had already moved on emotionally. A week later, he came home late, his shirt slightly wrinkled, hair messy in that casual, happy way. He looked content. I couldn't take it anymore. I snapped. "Are you in love with her?" I asked. He looked at me, steady as ever, and said, "She listens. She doesn't treat love like a trial run." Those words crushed me. I realized I had become everything I used to hate, selfish, impulsive, careless with someone else's heart. That night, I sat in the bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror for a long time. My reflection looked hollow. The same woman who once wanted to explore life now looked like she'd aged 10 years. I knew I'd lost him. Not because he left, but because I pushed him away until there was nothing left to hold on to. And the worst part? I couldn't even blame anyone else. Second update. There's a moment in every relationship when you can feel it, that invisible line being crossed. For me, it was a quiet Saturday morning. Ethan was sitting on the couch, reading something on his phone, coffee in hand, sunlight spilling through the window. He looked peaceful, too peaceful. And for the first time, I realized that peace didn't include me anymore. I sat beside him, trying to sound casual. "Do you still love me?" I asked. He didn't even look up at first. He just set his phone down slowly and said, "I don't know, Lauren. I think I love what we used to be, not what we are now." That answer shattered something inside me. I wanted to scream, to beg, to promise I'd change. But instead, I just sat there, numb, because I knew it was true. I had broken something sacred, something you can't just glue back together with tears and apologies. That night, I tried one last thing to remind him of us. I made his favorite dinner, wore the same perfume I used to when we first started dating. I even put on a song we both loved. He noticed, of course he did. He always noticed everything. He smiled politely, thanked me for dinner, and ate quietly. But there was no spark. Just politeness. Just distance. After dinner, I said softly, "Do you remember when we used to talk for hours while cooking?" He nodded. "Yeah, I remember. That was before everything became complicated." I laughed nervously. "We can go back, you know? We can fix this." He looked me straight in the eyes. "Lauren, some things don't go back. They just end." I froze. My throat tightened. That sentence felt like the final nail in the coffin of everything we once were. For days after that, we barely spoke. He went to work, I stayed home pretending to clean or read, but really I was just existing. Waiting. Hoping he'd soften. But he didn't. And then it happened, the moment I feared most. He came home early one evening, calm but distant. He asked if we could talk. We sat across from each other like strangers negotiating a breakup neither wanted to say aloud. "I think we should end the open relationship," he said quietly. I felt a wave of relief.
Yes.
"I want that too." He nodded.
Good.
"Because I also want to end this." I blinked.
What?
"The relationship. The engagement. All of it. It's done, Lauren." I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. You're leaving me?" He exhaled, steady, emotionless. "No. I'm just accepting what's already gone." I remember trying to argue, to remind him of the years we'd built, the dreams we shared, the wedding we'd planned. But he stayed quiet, firm, like he'd already said goodbye long before this conversation. I cried that entire night. Not the loud, dramatic kind of crying, but the silent, hopeless kind where your chest aches and your tears just keep coming even when you've run out of energy. The next morning, I tried to talk to him again, but he avoided me. He started sleeping in the guest room. He barely looked at me. Then, one morning, as I sat at the kitchen table staring at nothing, my phone buzzed. It was his mother. "Lauren," she said coldly, "I heard what happened. I can't believe you'd throw away everything like this." I tried to explain, but she didn't want to hear it. "You embarrassed him," she snapped. "You wanted to explore life? Well, now you can explore being alone." She hung up before I could say another word. A few minutes later, my own mother called, except her tone was the opposite. Worried. Gentle. "Sweetheart, what's going on?" "Ethan's mom told us you're breaking up." I broke down right there, sobbing into the phone. "I made a mistake, Mom. A huge one. I thought I wanted freedom, but I just wanted to feel something different. And now I've lost everything."
She didn't scold me.
She just sighed. "Then go talk to him. Be honest. If there's even one piece left to save, you have to try." I took her advice. That evening, when Ethan came home, I stood by the door waiting. My heart was pounding. "Can we please talk?" I asked. He hesitated, then nodded slowly. I told him everything, how sorry I was, how empty I'd felt, how none of those dates ever meant anything. I admitted that I was scared of losing myself in marriage, not him. That I'd confused adventure with immaturity, freedom with selfishness. I said everything I'd held back for months. He listened quietly, but his expression never changed. When I finished, he said, "I believe you're sorry, but being sorry doesn't erase what happened." I felt tears burning my eyes. "So that's it? You're just giving up on me?" He shook his head. "You gave up first, Lauren. I just finally stopped pretending we could fix it." That night, he didn't sleep at home. The next morning, I found boxes near the bedroom door. Empty, but symbolic enough that I didn't need to ask. He was preparing for me to leave. He didn't yell. He didn't fight. He just quietly detached, and somehow that hurt more than anger ever could. I texted him later that day. "You're really making me move out?" He replied, "I'm not making you. You made your choice. I'm just accepting it." I stared at that message for hours. Over the next few days, I packed slowly. Every shirt, every photo frame, every memory felt like a punishment. Every item I touched was a reminder of a version of me that didn't exist anymore, the version that was loved, trusted, and chosen. My mom offered to come help, but I said no. This was my mess. My consequence. Then, just when I thought it couldn't get worse, his mom showed up. She didn't knock. She stormed in, anger written all over her face. "I hope you're proud," she said, her voice trembling. "You destroyed him. You destroyed us." I stood there, silent, because there was nothing left to say. She kept talking, something about family, loyalty, disappointment, but her words blurred together through my tears. When she finally left, I sat on the floor surrounded by half-packed boxes, sobbing until I couldn't anymore. That night, Ethan didn't come home until late. I was sitting at the dining table, staring at nothing, when he walked in. He looked at me, tired, cold, done. "I think you should finish packing this weekend," he said softly. "You can stay at your parents' for now." My lips trembled. "I didn't think you'd actually go through with this." He nodded. "I didn't think you'd actually want to open our relationship. But here we are." I wanted to beg, to drop to my knees, to say anything that would make him change his mind. But his face said it all. There was no love left for me to hold on to. That night, I lay awake, staring at the empty space beside me, wondering how a single choice, a single reckless idea, had destroyed everything I'd ever wanted. And the answer was simple. It wasn't the open relationship that ruined us. It was me. Because while he was ready to build a forever, I was too busy searching for something more, only to realize too late that he was my more. Final update. The day I moved out was silent. No yelling, no goodbye hug, just the dull sound of tape sealing boxes and the hum of my own breathing. Ethan didn't help me pack. He didn't need to. He had already packed his emotions long before that day. I remember standing by the doorway, holding a small box of things that used to mean something, a framed photo from our first trip, a coffee mug he bought me, a dried rose I'd kept from our anniversary. Now, they just felt like pieces of someone else's life. Ethan was sitting at the dining table, staring at his phone. When I said softly, "I'm leaving," he looked up and said only 2 words. "Take care." That was it. No bitterness, no pleading, just calm finality. The kind that cuts deeper than anger ever could. As I walked out, I looked back one last time. The house felt smaller, emptier. I used to think that house was ours, that love lived in its walls. But in the end, it had always been his, and I was just a temporary chapter in it. When I got to my parents' place, my mom hugged me tight, but I could tell even she didn't know what to say. My dad barely looked at me. He never liked getting involved in emotional messes, and now that I'd caused one, he just kept quiet. Days passed. Then weeks. At first, I tried to stay busy, reorganizing, helping my mom around the house, pretending life was moving forward. But every night, when I lay down, it all came crashing back. The silence, the emptiness, the memory of Ethan's face the day he stopped loving me. I checked his social media more often than I'd admit. Nothing dramatic, just glimpses of his new, peaceful life. Gym selfies, coffee photos, random sunsets. He looked happier, lighter. And sometimes I saw Chloe in the background. That hurt more than anything. The same woman I once called my best friend was now the one comforting the man I broke. I told myself they were just friends. But I knew. You don't have to see a kiss to recognize love. It's in the calm between 2 people, the way they smile without trying. I try to stay angry at her. But in the quiet moments, I realized the truth. She hadn't stolen him. I had handed him away. One evening, after almost 2 months, I decided to drive by the old house. I told myself it was just curiosity. Closure. But deep down, I wanted to see him. Maybe talk. Maybe find a reason to believe there was still something left between us. When I parked outside, I saw his car. The lights inside were on. My heart raced. I sat there for 10 minutes, rehearsing what I'd say. "I miss you. I made a mistake. Please, just talk to me." Finally, I stepped out and walked up the path. My hands were shaking as I knocked on the door. When he opened it, he looked surprised but not angry. Just calm. Like he'd been expecting this eventually. "Hey," I said softly. "Hey," he replied. I asked if we could talk. He hesitated for a second, then moved aside to let me in. The house looked the same, yet completely different. His things were organized, clean, peaceful. The energy felt lighter, like my absence had somehow fixed the air. We sat at the kitchen counter. I stared at the floor, struggling to start. Finally, I said the only words that mattered. "I'm sorry." He didn't interrupt, didn't offer comfort. He just listened. I told him everything. How lost I'd felt, how stupid I'd been, how I thought opening our relationship would make me feel alive, but instead it killed everything real between us. My voice cracked as I said, "I miss you. I miss us. I'd give anything to start over." He looked down for a moment, then back at me with eyes that were kind, but no longer warm. "I don't hate you, Lauren," he said quietly. "I just don't trust you. And without trust, there's nothing left." Tears spilled down my cheeks. "I can earn it back." He shook his head. "You shouldn't have to earn love back. You keep it by valuing it when it's there. You didn't." That was the moment I realized he was truly gone. I wanted to tell him that I'd changed, that I'd learned my lesson, but even I knew how hollow that sounded. Change doesn't undo damage. Growth doesn't resurrect trust. So instead, I nodded and whispered, "I understand." He stood up slowly. "I hope you find peace, Lauren. Really. You deserve that." I smiled through tears. "And you deserve someone who never questions what she already has." As I turned to leave, he said quietly, "I already found someone like that." I froze for a second. I didn't need to ask who he meant. It was Chloe. I nodded, forcing a small smile, and walked out. The night air was cold. I sat in my car for a long time before driving away. My chest ached, but there was no anger left, just regret. A quiet, heavy kind of regret that sits with you every day, reminding you of what you lost. In the weeks that followed, I tried to move on. Therapy, journaling, late-night walks, all the cliches. But nothing really healed the emptiness. I wasn't mourning just Ethan. I was mourning the version of myself that believed she could play with love and still keep it safe. I realized too late that love isn't about freedom. It's about choosing the same person every day, even when it's not exciting, even when life feels ordinary. Ethan understood that. I didn't. And that's why he moved on, while I stayed behind, trapped in the echo of my own choices. Sometimes I still dream about him. Not the man who left me, but the one who used to laugh while cooking dinner, the one who kissed my forehead when I was stressed, the one who looked at me like I was his entire world. In those dreams, I get to hold him again. And for a few seconds, it feels real. But then I wake up and reality hits me all over again. He's gone. Not because of betrayal, not because of lies, but because I thought I could test love and still keep it. If anyone reading this ever thinks about opening their relationship, don't do it out of boredom. Don't do it to chase excitement or to find yourself. Because sometimes, in the process of trying to find yourself, you lose the one person who made you feel whole. And if you're wondering how I know that, it's because I live it every single day.